Hello, mi gente. I'm Isham. I've been thinking about a question that has been debated for a very long time, and I'd like to share my thoughts here. Please note that some people could find this disturbing. So, does God exist? Science or religion? Which is right? Let's take this in cases. Let's start by assuming that science is right. Now, what does that imply? You and me are manifestations of some rules or principles. We and everything else are aggregates of individual particles. To me, that's a very exciting prospect. That some atoms combine in particular groups called molecules, and they react in particular ways to result in these thoughts and words on their own. That's incredible. The prospect that we happened, the fact that life happened with no guidance, that's incredible. Think about it. From atoms and molecules, we are entities that can picture these atoms and molecules themselves. In effect, atoms and molecules thinking about atoms and molecules. If science is right, lifeless particles are working together to think. Here's an analogy. A bunch of rocks, which are lifeless as they are, but when they are arranged in a particular fashion, or rather, when by themselves they arrange in a particular fashion, there is information in that arrangement. After all this knowledge that we possess, all of this must exist in arrangements of rocks called atoms. That's just mind-blowing. If science is right and there is no God, then life is the most incredible thing that ever existed. Once I asked my friend Sahil about the science-religion question, and he told me this. I quote, "Imagine a tree, and imagine there's sand below it. The tree has a low branch that touches the sand. The branch sways in the wind and it draws lines on the sand. Natural. But what if the swaying of the wind created a poem on the sand? What are the chances?" This, in fact, could be one of the best arguments against science in this debate. The chances. Individual atoms aligning so perfectly to form thoughts, how likely is that? And if life was born on its own, why haven't we found life elsewhere? The whole universe is made of the same material, so atoms could have just combined to form something that could survive on Mars too. It's not that we expect cats and dogs on Mars. If you can accept that, okay, but what about all the habitable planets? Why not there? This is why I believe God exists. Life is too good to have been formed on its own. I don't say it's impossible, I just don't want to be on the side of an infinitesimal chance. If you ask me, life is magic. There is a counter-argument. It's called the Anthropic Principle. Here's how a brief history of time defines it. There are two versions of the Anthropic Principle, the weak and the strong. The weak Anthropic Principle states that in a universe that is large or infinite in space and or time, the conditions necessary for the development of intelligent life will be met only in certain regions that are limited in space and time. The intelligent beings in these regions should therefore not be surprised if they observe that their locality in the universe satisfies the conditions that are necessary for their existence. It's a bit like a rich person living in a wealthy area not seeing any poverty. Few people would quarrel with the validity or utility of the weak Anthropic Principle. Some, however, go much further and propose a strong version of the principle. According to this theory, there are either many different universes or many different regions of a single universe, each with its own initial configuration and perhaps with its own set of laws of science. In most of these universes, the conditions would not be right for the development of complicated organisms. Only in the few universes that are like ours will intelligent beings develop and ask the question, why is the universe the way we see it? The answer is then simple. If it had been different, we would not be here to ask the question. The argument continues. But does it matter? Does it actually matter who is right? Does it make any difference? I think it does. It makes a major difference in one thing: death. If religion is right, the body is physical and the mind or the soul, whatever you call it, that is, let's just say, magic. So when we die, our body, that is the physical part, the atoms, just leave formation. Slowly but yeah, they part ways. Soon the body no longer exists. Some of those atoms are in the soil now, some in the sky, and some in someone's food. But the magic part, our consciousness, that still exists. I'll not go into whether it stays here or leaves to the magic world, but it's just our life on earth that ended. We still exist. On the other hand, if God doesn't exist and we're products of science, it's different. At death, it's not just our life that ends. we end. There's no more you or me. Try thinking about that experience. Imagine dying in a world with no God. You see your last sight, you take your last breath, you close your eyes and try to feel that. Where are you now? What happened to your consciousness? It's not darkness, it's not solitude, it's nothing. Literally nothingness. Try to imagine nothing. It could be terrifying. It was for me. Everything would end. At my death, for you it's just I that ceased to exist. For me, it's a whole world that ceases to exist. How would that feel? Probably not very bad. In fact, you'd feel the same way you felt before your birth, or the same way you feel when you're unconscious or deep asleep. That's the feeling of nothing. That by itself isn't so bad, but eternity, ending forever, that's a scary concept. I like to believe that religion is right. Unfortunately, there is one strong argument in favor of science, and that is the existence of religions themselves. You see, the world has a lot of religions, but some things are common in most of them. Most religions have a concept of life after death. Some believe in heaven and hell, some in multiple incarnations. At first sight, that's okay. All the religions probably derived from a few, so it's natural that there are similarities. But just place yourself in the shoes of someone living thousands of years back. Suppose science was right, and you're a person from an ancient civilization, and you have no idea of God or religion. And yet, death is so confusing for you. What explanation would you come up with? If your community were to come up with an explanation for where dead people go, what would it be? Do you see my point? Modern religion aligns so well with the convenient story that ancient men were most likely to give. As a person who doesn't want to end, we'd want to believe in God and life after death. In short, if God didn't exist, the idea that mankind would come up with is painstakingly similar to religions. In a way, the existence of religions supports science in this argument. Let's leave the argument there. I personally believe in my God and I'm on the side of religion. You can pick your side. Let's now focus on death, or in particular, that feeling of death. This is where artificial intelligence comes in. Computers and us, isn't that the same relation between us and God? We created machines. We programmed them. The ones we built first, for example, an abacus. They're analogous to organisms like microbes, bacteria, and viruses. They do their function, but they don't think for themselves. And then we build more complicated machines, like calculators, like cats and dogs in life. Us to God is what artificial intelligence systems are to us, though we haven't reached there yet. A creation of us that can think for itself, and yet can be controlled by us. Don't you see the similarity? Computer science is our opportunity to play God. In fact, I think this relation shows that God is not that much of an illogical concept as some people claim. Because we are gods for our computers. How much does your computer know of your existence? How much will an AI know about the existence of human beings, the ones who program them? The relation between computers, machines, and human beings can be used to study the philosophy of religion. For example, about that feeling of death I talked about. Imagine shutting down your computer. If the computer could think, how would it feel? What if we just pulled the plug? Like without telling the computer that we're going to shut it down. How would an AI feel when it's shut down? There is no guarantee that it will ever be turned on again. Try to imagine that. That is exactly that feeling of death. And so forth goes the argument. I'm not preaching. I didn't come here to make a conclusive statement. Of course, you don't expect me to declare that science or religion is right, because obviously I can't. I just wanted to share a few thoughts, and if you felt this intriguing, let me know by hitting the like button. And if you want more content like this, subscribe to my channel. For the topic of this discussion, no living person knows the answer. But the irony is that all becomes clear at death. Every single person finds out. Peace.